I've talked about quite a few shows that have been made from movie into TV shows now. They've gone from the big screen to the small screen. And some of them worked, some of them didn't work so well. Chucky, even though I love Brad Dourif's voice and the animation in it as a show, it kind of sucked, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So that got me thinking, what could be some good movies that could be turned into potentially a really good TV series? Now, when you're adapting from a movie to a TV series, there's quite a lot to think about. Like, do you have to keep faithful to the original movie? If you do it in the right way, can you make it something unique and different? Can you cast some of the original cast members from the movie into the TV show? We have to go with a whole new cast. How do you write a 90-minute, 120-minute movie into a multiple series? These are all questions people need to think about before they start adapting from a movie into a TV show. And there's a lot more than that. Even something like, what's the production company? Who's going to do the soundtrack, the score for it? There's really a lot to think about because making a movie into a TV show can be very risky, but can also have very high gain, high reward. So the convert to that is you get a really bad TV show and people get really disappointed because they love the movie, but now the TV show sucked. So these are just some of my ideas that I think could potentially work. Now they could potentially go bad. And I'm going to make an episode later talking about movies that I think should not be made into a TV show. And a couple of these ideas might overlap. So I might have something in this list that says it could be good. We should make it into a TV show. But likewise, on the other episode, I might say, well, I said this could be good, but maybe it could be bad. So you might get the same movie in both these lists here. And this isn't like a rank from best to worst. I don't like to do those. This isn't like a top 10 thing. So don't think by any means I'm saying this is my number one choice. I'm just going through them as I thought about the movies that I enjoyed that could potentially be into a good TV show. So let's go on to one of my favorite 80s horror movies, the remake of The Thing, the one with Kurt Russell, John Carpenter. Get ready to hear John Carpenter's name a few times because he does great work. But the movie was great. Now, this potentially has all the hallmarks to make a really good TV show. For example, it would have to be in an isolated location. I don't think it would work in a city. I mean, theoretically it could, but I think they would rely on that too much. And what I mean by that is the mimic, the shape-shifting thing could change into so many things that I think the plot would start getting a bit ludicrous and a little bit silly at some points. Also, the feel of isolation, like in the movie, they're stuck in the Antarctica and there's nothing around them. That really built the atmosphere around it. So I think maybe you could do it in the same location. I don't think there's any problem reusing the location from the movie to the TV show. Perhaps something like a jungle could be a cool scene as well because it is isolated and there's lots of things it can turn into, but not so many it become overwhelming. This would have to be a short-lived one. I think maybe 3 seasons long, maybe 8 episodes a season. I feel that if you drag it on too long, it would either become redundant or it's just start scraping for some silly storyline to keep it going on, kind of like it's on its deathbed and it's got a respirator over its mouth. And many TV shows have done that. It's like, yeah, its time is over. It should have been over a couple of seasons ago, but they just want to make extra money from it. And then we see the demise of the show. Classic example of that is That 70s Show, one of my favorite comedies of all time, but it could have really have done without that last season. I think when Eric left, that's how it should have ended. They should have made a special ending for when Eric left, and that's it. But anyway, I think The Thing potentially could be really good. Okay, so what do we have next? I've written them all down here. Okay, so the next one has kind of been made into a TV show before, but not really, and that's Friday the 13th. Now, the Friday the 13th TV show in the 80s, it was more about a group of people in this shop of weird antiques, and they have to go around and solve these puzzles and stop the curse on the antiques in the shop. It really didn't have anything to do with Jason. I feel that making a TV show could really help in a couple of ways. A, it can bring new blood and new life into the Friday the 13th series. We haven't had a movie for a while, and the last movie they made was kind of In fact, the last few was a little bit iffy. This could bring new life and new blood. It could maybe lead into making new movies as well. This one would have to be very carefully done, however, because I could see having a whole series, like let's say 5 seasons, 6 seasons, 24 episodes apiece. It could get a little bit boring. I think, Camp Crystal Lake is still a great location for that. You could have it where each season is taken over like a complete night. So it's kind of like each episode's like it's meant to be an hour in time of the night, or something like that. I think if you have it over multiple days, you start thinking, oh, why the hell haven't they got out of there? I think Jason would have to be used sparingly. My fear would be that they would use him too much, and they're just trying to use the face of Jason to sell the show. I think this would be a good show if they can have a very good character development, if they can have some very good actors. In this case, yes, the actors will make the show, not just the monster or the killer in it. So, I think we need to be a bit careful about that. But they just have potential. And likewise, going on to the next one, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I think this has far more potential than the Friday the 13th. Just the nature of what Freddy is and how he kills people. You could do a lot more in the backstory of Freddy and how he came to be the killer. You could talk about what happened to him after he died the first time and how he's coming back haunting the dreams. They did kind of talk about that a little bit, but in each movie it's only a little bit, and there's different explanations. Now, I'd like to have a definitive explanation and something with a good story to go with it. Not just, oh, look, he sold his soul, now he's come back. No, a good solid foundation, something based maybe in pseudo-history could be interesting. And the good thing about this show, potentially, would be that all the different kind of scenes and deaths you could have, because, it is in a dream, you have unlimited resources on what Freddy can do and how he can do it to you. However, I think it's going to be much like Friday the 13th. Don't overuse Freddy Krueger too much in it. I think if he's in it too much, he'll lose his luster. That what made the movie so great was Freddy was in it just enough to develop his corny lines, his jokes, and scare you. If he was in it too much, it just wouldn't be scary anymore. It'd just become kind of like a joke. And so for that reason, I think you'd have to have a really good storyline on how you carry this on. This could be done in just like a couple of seasons, but potentially if you get some really good writers, you could have a long-lasting series, maybe like 6 or 7 seasons long. I think that would be about an ideal length. Please, I know Robert Englund probably won't do Freddy's voice again or be Freddy. He's getting a bit old for that. He said he doesn't want to do it anymore. But please, please, please do not hire the person who played Freddy in that reboot that they did. No offense to him, but it absolutely sucked. He just was not built. His voice was not suitable for the movie. So get someone else. There's a whole host of actors out there I believe could play Freddy. Just don't get him, please. All right, so what we got on the next one is... Okay, this one could be a little bit strange. And again, I think this would have to be a short-lived series. But The Hills Have Eyes. There's a whole lot of creepiness going into the movie. You have that kind of like isolated but hillbilly, get my banjo, ding 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 ding. Well, what are you gonna do here, son? I'm gonna rap you good kind of feel going on. And the movie was really creepy. You could do like a whole thing where there's a family or a couple families decide to go on a camping trip and they get lost in the hills and they get stalked and tortured and blah 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 blah. That could be a really interesting series. Again, I think it'd have to be maybe 1 or 2 seasons. Actually, I think just 1 season, 10 episodes would be perfect for something like this. Enough room to develop characters, enough room to scare you each episode, but not going on too long where it's like, well, you're going to run out of people who's being killed, and how are you going to keep on getting people coming to this isolated area? It'd make no sense. So I think that could be an interesting one. Again, just don't make it too long. All right, so the next one. This one has to be handled super delicately. This one has to have everything perfect. If one thing goes wrong, the entire show could be ruined. And I'm talking about one of my all-time favorite movies, just in general, not necessarily scary horror movies, even though it's not that scary. Ghostbusters. Come on, it's Ghostbusters. You've already got all the characters there. If you decide to carry on with like the whole, Egon Ray route, you just maybe get some different actors to play those characters. But those characters are so well written, you get good enough actors, they can probably carry it on. And as we saw that can work out. The last two Ghostbuster movies were really good. They had a new cast, but the cast carried on that mantle so well, but kind of carried on the tradition of the characters based from the original movies. I'm not talking about the 2016 one that we're just going to forget that ever happened, okay? But we've seen that it can be done, and it can be done well. With something like Ghostbusters, you could have many seasons on this. You could introduce new characters. You could introduce new monsters. You could have a whole lot of backstories. Because, look, for example, Ghostbusters 1, the whole, Zool backstory thing, and Goja and the gods, that was awesome. You could totally do that and get away with many seasons. Each season maybe revolving around one head monster or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But again, you'd have to have the right production company, the right directors, the right producers, the right actors. Everything would have to go right for this. I think one thing wrong could ruin the whole show. So they'd have to be very, very careful on how they did that. Okay, so let's go on to our next one. I like the idea of this one because I always like the idea of the movie, even though the movie wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad. And that's urban legends. So if you didn't watch the movie Urban Legends, talking about, urban legends, you could do something really fascinating with this show. And you can make it short, or you can make it multiple seasons long, depending on which route you go. You could do it kind of like Supernatural, where the brothers are going around and they're hunting down these different urban legends, and these urban legends turn out to be true, and they're killing people. That could be an interesting route. It worked really well for Supernatural, going from story to story with one main story running in the background, kind of like X-Files did as well. There's another way you could do this. You could do each season is based on one urban legend, and you have a different cast of characters for each season. But the idea of this show is truly fascinating because there are so many urban legends, not just, in America, but all over the world. You could have like urban legends coming from different countries, and that could be really awesome. It would help educate people on horror and horror stories based in different countries, so they're not just getting the same old spiel that you see in a lot of TV shows. So this idea has a lot of great potential. And I don't think there's a lot of things that could go wrong with it. Even if you didn't have the greatest director, as long as you got some decent actors, it could do well and a decent story. If your story is kind of because it is based on an urban legend, well, then you can make it look visually stunning to try and cover that fact. So there's many avenues they could go with this adaptation, but I would be really interested to seeing an urban legend movie to TV because I think the possibilities, aren't limitless, but there's a lot that they could do with this. All right, so I'm going to go into the next one. This one, again, could be hit or miss. And that's going to be, again, one of my all-time favorite movies, The Shining. Now, I know what you're thinking, The Shining? How can you turn that into a TV show? That's sacrilege! Ah! And part of me agree with you. I did mention that some of these movies will be on both my lists. Much like Ghostbusters, this would have to be done perfectly. You need to have absolutely the right director for that. I think, first and foremost, you need someone who can play the lead character the best. It doesn't have to be Jack. It could be another family. That doesn't matter. But that lead actor, whoever it is, he or she, would have to give a performance of a lifetime. I'm thinking like Joaquin Phoenix could be really good in something like this. The director would have to be super important as well because, Kubrick did such a good job with the movie that I feel you have to live up to his quality and expectations of a TV show adaptation. Now, how would you turn this into a TV show? Well, you could have a short-lived one where it's just based on one family. You could have it where it's based on different families going in the house. Because that's something they didn't touch on too much. And they did touch a little bit on the sequel with Dr. Sleep, which I actually really enjoyed. And I enjoyed that they went back to the house. Give more story of the background of the house. What happened there? Why does this making people turn crazy? There's a lot of stuff you could do about the history of the house as well. So I feel that this would probably be better suited as a shorter series, but potentially it could go longer. But like I said, strong cast, strong writing, strong director. I'm thinking that maybe like somebody like Peele, Keenan Peele, could do really good on that. He's been doing some horror movies and he's done a fantastic job. So I'd be really interested to see him collaborating with the person who did the writing for maybe like True Grit. That could be a really interesting collaboration because True Grit was really wonderfully written with some rich characters. Imagine Joaquin Phoenix is a lead in it, going crazy. You got a lot of stuff going on there that could work out very, very well. All right, so this next one is completely out of the blue, and if you've never seen the movie, I'm not surprised. But I really enjoyed it growing up. My uncle introduced me to this movie, and it's called Delicatessen. Now, if you never saw Delicatessen, it's an 80s horror-ish movie, more psychological horror. It was a strange and creepy movie. If you haven't seen it, maybe watch it. It is kind of scary. Again, more of that psychological and cringy kind of scary. But it could work as a TV show. And there could be two ways you're looking at this. Either A, you're looking from the perspective of the owners of the delicatessen, the people who's butchering people and eating them. You have that unique view of things from like the quote-unquote bad guys or villains. Or you could do it where there's a detective looking into the disappearances of these people. Or you could have it as like a collaboration of both. But just the idea of cannibals eating people in a delicatessen, I think could be a really interesting TV show. Again, I think a short-lived one, maybe 1 or 2 seasons. I'm not sure who would win. Would the detective find out? Or would they eat the detective? That's up to the writers. But it's kind of an out of a blue idea. And I feel that because there's not a lot of people who has seen it, there's not as much of an expectation to be let down by something like that. So anyway, Delicatessen, maybe worth a shot. Okay, so we know they made a Chucky TV show, but there's another movie that came out around about the same time as Chucky that I always found interesting and never got its accolades as it should have, and that's The Puppet Master. Now, The Puppet Master is, as it says, there's a lot of puppets in there and they're doing evil things. Now, there's a whole series, and this did start getting a bit silly with like the access of powers and things like that. But how silly that movie is, it gave me the idea of how this could be a good TV show. Rather than just having the one doll, Chucky, you could have multiple puppets and their killings or their escapades and what they do. They could even have like a civil war between them. Some people align with the humans. Some people are trying to kill the humans. There's a big fight going on. But there's so many different puppet designs that they could do. You could actually expand this whole universe and make it a very interesting storyline. I feel that the one good thing that they did with Chucky is that they actually used a real doll instead of using CGI. I feel for this show, they'd have to do the same thing as well. I know I'm not going to go my whole anti-CGI. I'm not anti-CGI like some people said. CGI is right for the right time and the right place and the right kind of production. I think for this kind of production, the CGI would not fit in. That's all I'm saying. So before you go crazy, oh, Dave's all anti-CGI. No, I'm not. The CGI is here for a reason and it has its purpose. Just I feel people use it too often and they use it too much. That's all. And when you can do something with a physical form instead of using CGI, I just prefer that route. I'm not saying anything bad about CGI. Just don't overuse it. All right, so going back to the 80s again, and this is kind of a strange one again. Phantasm. Does anybody remember this movie, Phantasm, or the series? I think there's 3 of them. It has a really interesting backstory, the one with the silver balls. It has some really good characters already built into it. I feel that it come across kind of like an American Horror Stories kind of style. Keep it kind of like dark and kind of dismal in a way. But I always wanted to know more about the background of Phantasm, the man in black with the silver balls and the weird space that they go into. There's a lot they didn't explain, and I wanted them to explain it. And I think maybe a TV show could do that at long last. it's one of those movies. A lot of people never saw it or never heard of it, but if you ask those people who have seen it, they really, really enjoyed it. And quite often they say the same thing. I wish there was more of them. I wish we had a bit more of an explanation of things going on, a bit more of development of some of the characters. So anyway, Phantasm could be an interesting one. And if you've not seen the movie, it might be worth a look at. All right, so look, vampires have been done to death, really. And I am hesitant to say this one because I'm tired of seeing vampire TV shows and movies. But there is one movie that I think would make a good adaptation, and that's The Lost Boys. That whole dynamic of the actors together was just tremendous. It was just a great fun movie, and I think it could be made into a great fun TV show. I think in this case, obviously you'd have to have different actors, but keep the same characters that are based in the movie. A perfect example of this is the Frog Brothers, the Corey and Corey. They made that movie really, really good. And I think you'd need to keep the Frog Brothers in there. Have the younger brother and the older brother. You know, the older brother turns, the younger brother fights. You could make this into a really cool series. You could talk more about the Lost Boys themselves, as in, aka the vampires, their background stories. How did they get like this? You could still introduce Kiefer Sutherland again. Maybe rather than being the head of the Lost Boys, maybe he's the head vampire this time. The roles have been kind of switched a little bit over. So I think basically what they'd have to do to make this TV show is keep the characters from the movie, but ignore the story from the movie. And what I mean by that is you still have the characters that would develop for this movie, but you don't continue on from what the movie was. You don't say, okay, this happened in the movie, now this happened after the movie. No, I think basically you'd have to write a whole new storyline. You can keep the basic premise still the same, but I think a whole new storyline would have to be written for this. Now, speaking of Kiefer Sutherland, here's another one that could come out, and that's Flatliners. If you haven't seen Flatliners, please do. It's a wonderful movie. Basically, the whole premise is these doctors, they kill themselves for a short time and come back to life because they want to see what the afterlife is like. However, when they come back, they bring back like a demon or their own personal nightmares, their own history, the things that they did bad, back with them that haunts them and tries to kill them. This is a great premise for a TV show because you could have all these doctors bring different things back. You have a whole thing where you can talk about what they did to bring these creatures back. You could talk a lot about the afterlife, because that was always the interesting premise of the movie, was the views of the afterlife. Like, is there hell, is there heaven, or is there just absolute nothingness? And, you know, for a lot of people, that's actually just scary. I mean, you know, people always are scared of the unknown, right? And I mentioned Kiefer Sutherland. How could you bring him back? Well, you know, he was in the movie as the doctor, and the young doctor who's kind of leading it. Maybe now he's the resident, he's the head chief resident of the hospital, and he finds other students doing the same thing. Maybe he tries to stop them. Maybe he teaches them. I don't know, but I think Kiefer Sutherland would ease back into that role really well. And with the idea of like people's morals and backgrounds, you could have a great many options to go with this. I think this would need to have a good script, though. Number one, a good script for this to make the story not go, you know, off the crapper. All right, so another thing that's been done to death is zombies. Zombies here, zombies there, zombie. I'm tired of it. But there's one movie that I think could make an interesting TV show, and that would be the 28 days or 28 weeks. That has a very fresh approach to what zombies were, even though I don't think they technically call them zombies. There's a virus, but come on. It's a zombie, okay? Get over it. But that could be really interesting. It's got a really creepy atmosphere, especially if they could do the whole shooting in a city where there's nothing left. It's this whole fast rabbit, quick zombie that's chasing after them so quick, made it completely fresh and completely scary. You could carry it on. You know, 28 weeks, maybe you do 28 months later. Maybe there's been a relapse in the outbreak or something like that. Or you just do it from the beginning again. 28 days, and then each season or each episode might be a different day at a time, where it's meeting new characters. It can't be like The Last of Us meets 28 days later. That has a real good potential. Again, I think the story could be pretty basic, but I think you'd have to have good actors on this. And surprisingly enough, I'm going to say a really good sound director and a really good set director to give that ambient atmosphere. Because while The Last of Us I thought was really good as a TV show, I feel that the set director and the scene director didn't actually do a great job. It didn't give you that kind of apocalyptic feel about the whole thing. I just felt that was lacking. Unlike the game, which really you had that feel about everything, like the dilapidated buildings and all the sounds and the things breaking. So I think those few things would be important. The acting, the sound, and the set or stage design would have to be very important. Okay, so we're getting almost to the end of the list here. Now, there's a few that I thought would make possibly a good show, but they already have, or is coming out soon. Aliens being one of those. I'm going to wait to see about that. I think that comes out next year, so I can't review it now. Another one, no, I'm not going to talk about Predator. That's going to be on my next list. So, yeah, that's going to be on my bad list. I'm going to tell you why on my next list. All right. I know I'm missing quite a few here. There's a lot of other movies I believe that could be turned into a good TV show. Maybe at the end of this episode, I'll make a list and you can read what I thought. Maybe you can add some things. Do you think what I said was true? Do you think it's not true? What movies would you like to see made into a TV show? Please comment and add. I'd be really interested to see that because I love to think about how they would do it and if it would work or if it wouldn't work. So my last one here, because it's getting on a little bit long, is This Is the End. Now, I'm not sure if they could get the cast again. If they could, that would be fantastic. But This Is the End could be made into such a good, scary, and funny TV show. If you've not seen a movie, go watch it. While it's not completely scary, there's some kind of scary moments in it, but the comedic actors in it, everybody's in this movie. I mean, so many comedians are in this movie. And that's the problem as well. If you want to do a TV show, I'd really want to see these people come back to it. Now, they could do it like a movie where basically they just made a quick cameo in the movie and then died pretty quickly. They could do that. They could maybe have them stay around for a little bit longer until they're killed off. That would be nice to see. But I would want to see a lot of these actors from the movie come back into it one way or another. And it has great potential. I mean, they could be inside the house for a couple of the seasons trying to survive. Then maybe they can explore the outside, trying to survive, finding about what happened, how did this happen, how did they get... Hey there. So unfortunately my camera ran out of battery, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly. Let me know what you think. I think some of these have potential to be very good. Maybe not. Write down a list of what you think you would want to see from a movie to a TV show. Or the ones I said, do you agree or disagree? It's an interesting dialogue to talk about. There's lots of fascinating facets we could go down with. All right, have a good day and keep your eyes open for a follow-up episode about movies that should not be a TV show. Bye for now.